It's autumn here, so I'm going to do my annual project here I call Trompe L'oeileaf. I kind of play with the idea of trompe l'oeil, which is a French term for trick the eye. So we're going to play around with these ideas of realism and color theory as we draw some leaves that you can find outside. And if you're in an area where it's mostly warm and you don't have autumn, there will always be some leaves that are kind of browning, yellowing, that you'll be able to get for this project. But it's a wonderful thing to do in the fall or the autumn. So one of the things you're going to need is a light source. So I have a little lamp over here, and I took the shade off and I'm going to put it on its brightest setting. And I need to have a single light source. Now, if you have open windows and they're facing a sunny window, that's fine, you can use that. But otherwise, a single lamp is going to help you quite a bit. So find a selection of leaves, and you can do this with any art material that you have, from color pencils to watercolors to acrylics to oil pastels, crayons. Almost anything is going to work. For this example, I'm going to use watercolors and color pencils, and these color pencils happen to be watercolor pencils, so they're going to act like regular color pencils, but then I can blend with water, which is kind of a nice little trick. So let me remove this stuff out of my way, and we're going to focus on the drawing portion of it. So it's okay if you have leaves that have little rips in them and that kind of stuff. It actually adds some visual interest to it. You can do simple leaves, more complex leaves, but I like to pick leaves that have a variety of colors going on. So all of these have a little bit of yellow, a little bit of red, some yellow, and some brown. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this leaf for now to start. And the start of the project is very easy. You just put the leaf where you think you want it, and you're going to go ahead and trace it. So you're going to go ahead and use a pencil and very carefully trace the outline, catching any of the nooks and crannies that go around the leaf. And I'm pressing very, very lightly. I call it ghost light, and it might not even show on the camera all that much. Now, sometimes when you trace the stem, it ends up being a little thicker than it needs to be, so you can kind of adjust that later. Now, if you have any rips or little holes in the middle, you want to catch those as well. And there's my stem. Now what I'm going to do is figure out where does the stem go through the center, that center vein. And I'm going to hold my pencil over top where I see a vein split off from the center. And I'm going to go ahead and mark that just by holding it. And then I pull the thing away and I make a dot. Put it back in the outline, and I see another major vein here. Go ahead and make a dot. And then along here, here's another vein attaching to the center. Pull it out, make a dot. And then I'm just going to go ahead and kind of hit a midway point. I don't see any more veins up here because it's all brown. So line it up, make a dot. Now I know these dots will go ahead and line up. So I go ahead and line them up, and then they go down to the stem. And they'll start off very, very thin, and then they can get slightly wider as they go down to meet the stem. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit a few of the main veins that go off of that center spoke and kind of have them go in the direction that I see. So that was a major one. Goes up and over to about here. This one comes up and over to the side. And this is kind of the last one I see, just a little bit, and then I can go on the opposite side. Now sometimes the veins will spread out, one to the right and one to the left, and sometimes they will be, they'll branch more, like one will be above the other one. And as you look here, you can see this vein off to the left starts a little lower, this vein starts a little higher. So they're not like one next to another, they're kind of offset a little bit. So I want to make sure that I'm doing that to be honest with the drawing that I'm creating. And because you're doing this in pencil, you can erase and kind of fix any little mistakes that you make. So like this line needs to bow out a little bit more. Right. Then I have the general shape of the leaf. The next thing I want to do is draw the shadow. So I put my light source where I want it, where I think it gives me the most interesting shadow. It's a tunch lamp, so it's being a little funky here. So now I'm going to go ahead and trace the sides of the shadow that I see. And I can see the shadow comes under the leaf here, and it goes out. And I want to catch all the little ins and outs that make the shadow unique. Now if there's a hole in your leaf, you'll also have like a little bright spot in the shadow. You'll need to catch that. But I'm only catching the shadows that are outside the leaf. Okay? And I look on the other side, I don't see any because the light's coming from here. Once I have this established, I can't move my light anymore. So you can move your light in the beginning to kind of figure out your shadow, but then if I do another leaf over here, that's the shadow I have to do. If your shadows change position, then it's going to look unnatural. And we're trying to fool the eye. All right, so now I'm going to pull that aside, and I'm going to start to analyze the colors that I see here. And I'm going to go ahead and start this one in watercolor. I got my little brush and got a little water here off to the side. And to start my watercolors, I just activate my paint. Now I'm working just with primaries. You could have more of a full set. I do have one to the side, but I want to practice my color mixing techniques. So if I've got green here, but it's mostly yellow, then I know that I have to put down yellow first, and I can add a little blue. So I go ahead and put that down. The vein is mainly yellow, so I'm going to go ahead and go on the vein very lightly. Yellow. And I will speed this up so you can kind of see my process. Now don't get confused about the shadow. The shadow is just a shadow. Can I add my red? Sometimes if I have like a sharp edge and I want to blend it away, I can just put some clean water on it. So you can see here that there's no color in that. Now I can just use that to kind of blend away an edge. So it's a natural thing, so I don't necessarily want it to have hard edges. So I can kind of soften up the edges with just a little bit of water on the brush. Now we've got a lot of brown up here, and the way to make brown with your primary colors is to mix all primaries. And your brown may lean a little bit towards one of the primaries. So I'm going to say this one leans more towards reddish brown. So I'm going to make sure I put more red in it than the other colors. But I want to use red probably last. So I'm going to go ahead and beef up the yellow and blue, and then go ahead and add red, and you'll see that it starts to turn brown. And then I can put brown in some of the other spots too. Next, I'm going to steal some of this brown for some of the other areas where I see brown, like on the little tip down here I see some brown. I see some coming along the edge of the vein. So I'm going to go ahead and use some of that brown. Now I'm going to squeeze out my brush, and it's going to become sponge, and I can pull up some of the color if I think I went a little too dark. So I got this fold on the leaf that looks lighter, so I'm going to lighten that. And then we've got this, I don't know if it's mold or something on the leaf, but those sort of look lighter. So I'm going to go ahead and catch those patches. Now I'm going to use in yellow. You see I'm making some veins. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of cleaning my brush out so it's not too wet, and I'm getting mostly paint. And I've squeezed my brush so it's got like a flat side to it. So here it's kind of fat, here it's kind of flat. So I'm using that flat little razor edge to add in the tiny lines that I see in the veins. All right, so it's not perfect. I've got sort of the colors there. I might want to play with this a little more, make this more red, this more brown. This one's reading a little bit more greenish. So the opposite of green is red. So I could play with some more red and, hone the color down a little bit and kind of fix it up. When you think of opposites and you put them together, those will cancel each other out. And I could go back and, play a little bit more, play with the browns, make sure they're getting in there. Now you may think, well, why did you bother drawing the veins in if you're going to cover them up? Well, the veins kind of help me know that kind of the brown is on that side of the vein, and on that side and in the middle I've got a little bit more red. And then it just sort of helps me target what it is that I'm drawing so that I can make sure I'm putting the paint in, the right-ish place. Now for shadow, that's kind of fun because you can use a regular pencil and just color in the shadow. But you want to think about the value of the shadow, like how dark is it? So when I look at this shadow, and I need to make that darkness here, I would go ahead and color in, but with small, short pencil strokes. And you can always go darker if you need to. But I like to start fairly light and then go ahead and get darker as I work. Make sure that the shadow touches the leaf. Otherwise it can look like there's a little halo going around and then it looks unrealistic. The shadows do touch the objects, so you'll want to make sure that it does. Unless this object is lifting up, like right here, it lifts up, and you can see that's true in here. There's a little light coming through, so I would go ahead and, show that. Now another trick is that you can go over it in another direction, and that'll make the shadow a little darker, more intense. And generally you want the shadows to be darker as they go underneath the object, so you can press a little bit harder. Normally I would wait a little bit longer for my paint to dry, but for the sake of the video, I am not waiting. Now I can take a tissue, fold it in half 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I can use the corner, and that can be used to kind of blend. If you don't have a tortillon or, a blending stick of some kind, this will work and will give you a little bit more control. Now, you're welcome to go back in with watercolor into the shadow if you feel like you want to add a little blue to the shadow, which often looks nice. You can certainly do that. But I kind of like the pencil technique for adding shadows because you get a nice gray tone. But you can see this is actually darker than this. So maybe I need to go to a softer pencil, like a 4B or a 6B or an 8B. The B means soft. The H will mean that it's a harder lead. So a softer lead will give you a little bit better definition in the shadow. All right, the next leaf I'm going to do in color pencils and using very similar techniques. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll pick a simple one for this. And I'm going to go ahead and trace. Do the same technique where I point, pull away, make a dot. That's good. And we go ahead and join those dots. We know the vein ends here. And these do come off in pairs. So now the next one's going to be pretty darn close to that. And I can go ahead and trace my shadow. Put my leaf where it wants to be. This one has a little rip in it, so I'm going to catch that. You see the yellow here and on the sides. So over here, this starts to look orange. So you might think, well, why would you use yellow? Because, you know, you want to mix. No color that comes out of a crayon box or whatever is going to be exactly the colors you see. Everything you need to create must be blended. You may have noticed that I'm coloring between the spaces of the veins, and this kind of enhances the veins showing through in the leaf. It keeps the control better as I'm handling my color pencils, and you'll get a better result in the end. If you just try and color over the whole thing, it's going to look scribbly and unnatural, so you'll want to have smaller pencil strokes. You see it's turning a little bit more purpley towards the center, so I'm going to add some indigo or some different kinds of blues and purples there. Now I can leave this as color pencil, or like I said, I used watercolor pencils, so I could use a damp brush to kind of blend things away if I wanted to. And this can help kind of enhance the realness of it. All right, so there we have two leaf ideas. There are many more that you can do. We have many other leaves that we could be playing with. But the idea is to fool the eye and make it look so realistic that you're not sure which one you could actually pick up. That's the goal. Whether we get there or not is not really all that important, but it's the process that's more important. But these look lovely when you frame them up. They make a great little gift. You can sign it. And with fall, that means the holidays are following, and who doesn't love a little piece of original artwork? So go ahead and give it a try. Collect some leaves, and whatever material you have, make sure that you're layering your colors. That's the only way to achieve natural realism. In nature, you're not going to find black. You will find some browns and stuff, but black is just not going to be a color you're going to find in nature. So go ahead, give it a try, and subscribe to my other videos if you find this interesting. Thank you.